The number of poses in yoga that involve psoas and abdominals are many. Back bends is one of them. This video is about psoas and abdominals, and I will be covering three areas. Which are the poses in yoga that involve these two parts of the body? What is the link between the two? And how you can tailor your practice to address these two areas based on your level of experience as well as your body type. The psoas muscle, which runs from the front of the thigh, goes through the hip bones and ends up in the lower back, helps the body maintain the natural curvature in the lower back, which sequentially is very important for upright position and walking. At the same time, our pelvic position affects not only the psoas muscle but also our abdominals. So depending on how much our pelvis is in an anterior or posterior tilt, we are affecting both the abdominal section as well as our psoas muscle. Ultimately, we want the psoas muscle to be both flexible and strong. There is the common misconception that we need to stretch our psoas all the time, and this is not necessarily a bad thing, but we also need to think about how strong the psoas is. When is the psoas contracting? When we are flexing our hips. But while here my psoas is working, if I was just sitting down, it wouldn't, because when I'm sitting down, it is not lifting anything. Now it is lifting the weight of my leg and foot. So there are exercises that we can do, and I will cover a few where we can strengthen our psoas and at the same time engage potentially our abdominals. And I say potentially because this will depend also on hip and hamstring flexibility of the individual. And I will speak very soon about the individuality of different body types. The easiest way to understand the link between psoas and abdominals is to do abdominal exercises. I will give you a couple of them, and you can practice on your own, or once you see them, you realize that a lot of the times, instead of feeling your abdominals, you will feeling your psoas. One of them is the scissors. And this version of the scissors, where my hands are underneath my bum, I'm giving quite often, exactly so that people stabilize their hips and feel the abdominals as opposed to the hip flexors. That would be a more advanced version. A lot of people feel their psoas when they are using ankle weights. But of course, we always want to have strength in the full range of movement, which is why I'm using this deficit scissoring exercise now. I could progress it further by lifting my hips further. I always think of challenging a muscle or a movement in different positions in space. And by that, what I mean, that the body can be in supine or prone, supported when a lot of the weight is on the floor, or not supported where the pelvis is off the floor, as well as vertical or inverted. Let's now look at how one can address these two areas if they are starting out now with yoga. I would suggest you begin with a few sets of boat pose, practice a few lunges, finish off with some scissoring work. More advanced practitioners, you can be practicing some plank, wheels, as well as inverted scissoring. Based on my experience, people that have the tendency to be lordotic will tend to have relatively flexible psoas but weak abdominals, so they need to tailor their program accordingly. While people that have more of a flat back, they tend to have stronger abdominals, maybe psoas, and they need to spend more time doing flexibility work. It's also worth remembering that the psoas is reaching all the way up to the diaphragm, which is why a lot of people will claim that the way we breathe may significantly affect our tightness in the psoas. What is important to remember, sure though, is that the diaphragm is an abdominal muscle, and as such, tightness that we experience in the lower back or the front of the thigh will to some extent affect how well our abdominals function. I suggest you give these exercises a go, and if you don't know how to practice each one and you want some feedback, please reach out to me. Also, it might be worth remembering that myofascial release, which I have not addressed in this video, might be very well worth spending some time in. You can do myofascial release with a peanut or a lacrosse ball directly into the psoas, and I will demonstrate that now for you, but also for muscles that are nearby, such as the glutes, quads, and ITB. In order to find a myofascial release for your psoas, you want to put the peanut or the lacrosse ball halfway between your hip bone and your navel, and you will be lying on your belly. You relax, and from there you start lifting the same side leg. Because I've done this exercise many times before, it is quite easy for me to put the peanut in the right position straight away. But if you try to do this exercise and initially you cannot find any stretch, which we will be experiencing in the front of your thigh, please do give them a couple of goes. Of course, there might be the case as well that visceral fat may be getting in the way.